everybody. This is the Cerebral Spice Rack. My name's Everett here. I'm the host. We're going to be talking all about gun control and firearms today. We're really getting on it. Just basically, the unalienable right of humans and just really any being to protect themselves with whatever arms necessary. It's a right that I believe is probably the most critical and most important because, a lot of people say that the Second Amendment is what protects the rest of the amendments, and it's not just about the amendment, but it's about the right that's underlying all of that. And I think it's one of the most important things, especially with what's going on with Biden, the Biden administration, and a couple other states. We're really getting more into an area where gun rights are going to be attacked, and I feel like somebody needs to talk out about it. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. We're going to be going through lots of links. And I got my friend Chris here. If you wanted to introduce yourself real quick, Chris, while I get this shared out.
Yeah, just been working on the Liberty Train for the longest time. I think gun rights is one of the most critical rights that I can concur with, with Everett. So gun rights has been pretty big in my forte in libertarian issues. Very happy about.
Yeah, definitely. It's super important. All right, so we're going to get right into it. First little part, we're just going to get you guys some facts here. So first of all, the Second Amendment, obviously, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We'll get more into that later, but we'll just get into a little bit of the history of firearms first, just to give you guys a little bit of background. So basically, it's from PBS. First recorded use of a firearm was back in 1364, and basically, before the matchlock, says here, guns were fired by holding a burning wick to a touch hole in the barrel, igniting the powder inside. So basically all guns is a barrel that has a fire activated, activation to fire a projectile in a certain direction. That's all a firearm is, and we've been innovating and inventing new technologies on that since, as you can see here, the 1300s. So they've been around for hundreds of years. They've been a tool and a staple of Western civilization and even Eastern civilization for a long time. So that's just a little history on that. And we're going to get into a little bit of what Joe Biden is saying. And we'll get into more of his policy later. But this is something that I think is really important because a lot of people say stuff like this. He said that you weren't allowed to own a cannon during the Revolutionary War as an individual. And even PolitiFact, a left-leaning fact-checking site, rates this as false. So we'll see what they said about it. So the Biden campaign didn't offer any evidence to support his statements, and historians of the period are dubious laws against private cannon ownership existed. And there are documented instances of privateers or privately owned vessels that legally attacked enemy ships during wartime, setting sail with cannons during this period. So private citizens could own cannons and basically anything that the military had. And we'll just go into a little bit of what a privateer was, just to give you guys a little bit of information. So a privateer is a private person or ship that engages in maritime warfare under commission of war. Since robbery under arms was a common aspect, and this is the most important part right here, since robbery under arms was a common aspect of seaborne trade, until the early 19th century, all merchant ships carried arms. Basically, you needed to defend yourself. If you were an open ship on the open seas, you needed to have some sort of protection, or you were going to get, you needed to be able to defend yourself and your property. And the only way to do that was with these big firearms that are called cannons, obviously. Just a little bit of history, and we'll keep going on a little bit of the background information for those of you who don't know too much about guns and what their uses are. Maybe not their uses, but just a little bit of background information on them. So basically, one of the biggest arguments right now involves semi-automatics versus fully automatics. As it says here, semi-automatic means that once you have a round in the firing chamber, when you pull the trigger, that round will fire. So basically, one shot, one pull. One pull, one shot, basically. And automatics are when you pull the trigger and it continues loading the gun with additional rounds until your magazine is out. So basically, you cannot buy an automatic rifle. You can buy semi-automatic rifles, as in the AR-15 and No, it doesn't stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite. And this is something you hear about the left and people who don't understand a thing about guns. They say the AR stands for assault rifle. No, they don't. Um, so assault rifle is technically a term referring to military rifles, which have a switch on the side that allows the user to select semi-automatic, fully automatic, and in some 3-shot bursts. So basically, that's the description of a automatic weapon or an assault weapon. And can I buy a full auto weapon? No, not likely, because the only ones you were really able to buy legally right now were produced between 1934 and 1986, not produced but registered. After 1986, they passed the it was a firearm law. I should have this, but banning all
The
fully
Firearm
automatic
Owner
weapons.
Protection Act of 1986.
That's what it was. Okay,
Part of that act was a provision called the Hughes Amendment.
there you go. There it is. So basically, there's no way to get an automatic weapon right now unless you buy one of these antiques and get it grandfathered in. So if anybody tells you that you can buy an automatic weapon, it's not real. And these people on the left and people who don't understand guns that are saying this term fully semi-automatic, it's a dumb term. They don't know what they're talking about. There's semi-automatic and then there's automatic. So let's just to clear that up now, there is a difference, and most weapons in today's possession are semi-automatic. There are bolt action where you have to actually manually pull the bolt back and load it, which is different, obviously, but most of the guns are semi-automatic. And we'll just keep going on here with getting into some of the more societal issues from this. So kind of switching it up a little bit. So this article's from Reason. No, Joe Biden, cops can't just shoot people in the leg. And basically, this is another misconception by people who don't know anything about guns, is that you can't just, first of all, you have to be, it says in this article, you have to be extremely good marksman to be able to shoot somebody in a particular area and not their center of mass, which is what police and other people, military is trained to do. So basically, the main thing I wanted to read here is Bill Lewinsky. He wrote a paper for the Force Science Institute, and he says, an average suspect can move his hand and forearm across his body to a 90-degree angle in 12/100ths of a second. And he can also move his hand from his hip to shoulder height in 18/100ths of a second. And the average officer pulling the trigger as fast as he can on the Glock, one of the fastest cycling semi-autos, requires almost a quarter of a second to discharge each round. So even discharging is going to be... See, this is where the argument kind of comes in between this. But basically, anybody in that type of situation, they don't have time to figure out where they want to shoot. Trying to shoot a gun out of somebody's hand or trying to shoot them in the leg, it's not going to work because they don't have enough time. They might miss, and if they miss, then that's putting other people's lives in direct harm. You don't want to miss when you're shooting at something. You want your target to be hit, and you only want your target to be hit when you're shooting at something. So that's basically what this article is going about, and I really agreed with the last part of it, which says it's true that some police officers are too eager to fire their weapons in the first place, and idiotic police tactics like no-knock raids place them in situations where overreactions are likely to occur. So, and he says, but the public policy intervention needs to occur before the shooting starts. So basically, we need these policies in. We need to be using, I think, less lethal, capabilities before we go straight to the gun, which I think is a big problem in our society. Most police, they go right for the gun, and I think that's a big problem, not just with the whole BLM movement that's going on right now, but I think with just citizens in general. Police are just too quick to go for their guns. And is the point we'll bring it up more, but I don't think police are in a position to be doing that at all, because it's our right as citizens to own firearms. And I think as a police officer, you take on a responsibility that it's a dangerous job, and you have to make sure before you use deadly force that person's actually putting somebody's life at threat. So in my opinion, I don't think the use of deadly force with a firearm should be used until either a suspect or a perp is either pointing a gun at the police officer or someone, or actually firing it. I don't think they have any justification before that, in my opinion, to use deadly force, because, as I said, taking the responsibility of being a police officer is a huge responsibility, and you have to uphold certain rights. You take an oath to the Constitution. And we'll get into another article, but just because somebody's holding a gun doesn't give you the right to execute them, basically, on the streets. So I don't know. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Chris?
I guess it would be a question of police reform rather than it would come into a question of guns. Um,
Yeah.
that's definitely a really important topic to discuss because there's a lot of people that would be inclined that holding a weapon at the moment of, you know, opening fire would serve as some form of litmus test as to whether that person deserved to be executed or not. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe that simply being armed would constitute for that justification of firing upon a suspect. I mean, I've never truly understood that.
Mm-hmm.
People have the right to be armed. They certainly do have the right to, bear arms in the pursuit of self-defense. I just think a lot of people in modern society are very quick to judge, and that's, you know, on an individual basis. Too, and I don't believe that one shoe fits all when it comes to all police shootings or all suspect encounters with police. It's
Mm-hmm.
on an individual basis.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think you're right with this being more of a police reform issue, but it comes to everything in general. If you have a gun and you're trying to protect yourself and incapacitate somebody that's trying to harm you, you need to aim for direct, body, the body of mass, basically, and not try to shoot, their hand or their leg, unless you're an extreme marksman and you can do that. But basically, that's where the training comes in. Just wanted to give you a little bit you guys, a little bit of information on why people aren't trained to shoot in the leg because it's not possible and it's very dangerous, or not possible in most situations. But and then we'll get right into the CDC stats, and we're gonna be giving a couple personal accounts of this as well. Just to give you guys a little bit of idea, so there were more than 39,000 firearm-related deaths in the United States in 2018, which is that's bad that people are dying from firearms and whatnot. But I think the main takeaway from this from the CDC is defensive gun use. So it says here, although definitions of defensive gun use vary, it is generally defined as the use of a firearm to protect and defend oneself, family, others, and or property against crime or victimization. So estimates of defensive gun use vary depending on the questions asked, population studied, time frame, and other factors related to the design of the studies. And the report priorities for research to reduce the threat of firearm-related violence, and you guys can go look this up, indicates a range of 60,000 to 2.5 million defensive gun uses each year. So even that lowest estimate of 60,000 is still 20,000 higher than the people who were killed by firearms, basically. So, I'm not saying that all 60,000 of those saved a life, but they did save either a life or property, or somebody's family member. So I think that's the main point of guns. It's a defensive tool, and you're meant to arm yourself so you can defend yourself and your property. And not just your property, but, friends, family who are in danger. You have a right to protect them. It's as easy as that. A jackal in the African Saharas has a right to defend itself from a lion. It can use everything in its power, running, obstacles, its horns, anything in its power to basically ward off a predator. And that's what we are as humans. We're an animal, and we need to be able to use our tools and our weapons basically to be able to defend ourselves. And that's really what I believe in. And I actually have a personal account of this that I'm going to go over really quick. So basically, when I was living in Humboldt, I think this happened back in 2017. I was driving home from work one day. I was, coming home a little fast. I got behind somebody that just driving really slow. I tailgated them for a little bit. Probably shouldn't have, don't tailgate. But basically, they pulled over. I kept going. They pulled back onto the road, and they started following me. So I was like, okay. And I usually can pick up on when people are following me. So I rushed back to my house as fast as I could, but somehow the guy was able to catch me. And this is before I had my Challenger, unfortunately. I would have definitely been able to lose him with that thing. But basically, we got to my house. I pulled up in my parking spot. He pulled up right next to me. I rolled down my window and basically was like, I was like, why are you driving like a grandma, dude? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But he was like, oh, you want to see what a grandma does or something like that. And he pulled his car around to my car. I saw him getting out of it, obviously for an altercation. And I got out of my car as fast as I could. I ran in my house, grabbed my gun, came back outside, and that was probably like a 2 minute process where I had to get my gun out of my safe and everything, and I didn't load it or anything. It wasn't loaded, but I just wanted to have it there just to ward him off, basically. So ran back outside. He was still circling the block. I wanted to get my property out of my car so he couldn't do anything to it. He saw me. He drove back up, and as if he wanted to harm me again, I kept trying to flash the gun at him to let him know. And as soon as he got close enough to see that I have a firearm on me, I never pointed it at him. He was like, "Okay, I'll leave you alone, dude," and he left. So a personal account, not just statistical account, of a way that a gun was used in a defensive way. I don't know what would have happened to me or my property if I didn't have a gun. So just the mere fact of me, bearing my arm and showing it to him that I had something on me, that was enough to ward him off and get him away from me. So you guys can say whatever you want about guns. I know personally, I've used a gun for my own personal defense, and I would have felt a lot more unsafe had I not had a gun at that time. So it's very personal to me. I will always own a gun. Doesn't matter where I am. Obviously in California, there's a lot of laws here, and we'll get into this later about concealed carry and whatnot. We really should be able to be concealed carrying everywhere. But at least in my own home, I have my firearms, and I'm not going to let anything like that ever happen to me again. And if it does, then I'll be ready for it. So it's a personal issue for me. And I think, Chris, you also had a quick personal account of a personal defense use of a gun.
Yeah, first and foremost, before I begin into that, in 2005, this pretty much reaffirmed the idea that the police don't have any actual obligation to protect you. So in that particular instance, when shit hits the fan, you are your own gunman. You are your own Minuteman.
Exactly.
And I've had a personal encounter like that before. Well, not exactly in that fashion, but I've personally had to fend off gang members who were threatening me and my family, along with a long time ago. I can certainly remember that the ability, the beauty of having the ability to be armed in the defense against harm is probably one of the most critical and necessary things to actually, I guess, that level of protection against that level of safeguarding that the federal government or local police all times. You are your own man. That's the responsibility in the first place, is knowing, when and when not to use it. So there's a lot of responsibility. Obviously, the story, in your story, it certainly worked to your favor. In possibly something escalating into something worse. I know you personally be a very responsible and cool individual, so I know that's certainly the level of power that you were able to flex in order to avoid peril. So that's a really, really great example to tell people. For them to at least second guess, whether they want to continue through with their onslaught and crusade to have the federal government step in and regulate people like you and me to bear arms to defend ourselves in situations like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because it makes all humans. It puts us all on the same playing field. Anybody that knows me, you guys can see me. I'm a small guy. This guy that came at me, he was big and fucking muscular, and I wasn't gonna be able to take him on in a physical altercation. I would have been hurt very bad. And if I didn't have that gun as an equalizer, like I said, I don't know what would have happened to either myself or my property, and I don't want to think about what would have happened. I'm just happy that I had it, and this is why I say to everybody, has a good mind on them, get yourself a firearm for personal defense, because you don't know when you're going to need it, and you don't want to be in a situation where you need it but you don't have one. So it's crucial to exercise your Second Amendment right. I'm not saying if you have any suicidal tendencies or anything, maybe a firearm's not for you, but if you're if your mind's on right and you know that you are responsible, then I would definitely recommend getting a gun, because you just don't know when these things happen, and the only way to counteract them is to have your own defense. So basically, that's all I wanted to bring up with that, because it's very personal. So, and we'll get into finally start getting into some of the Supreme Court cases with this stuff. So
I mean, before you move on to the Supreme Court cases, I
Yeah,
would
go
also
ahead.
like to advise, and I'm sure it's going to sound a bit corny, quoting Spider-Man, but with power comes great responsibility. So certainly, taking that level of power into your hands, I should warn, it comes with an equal amount of responsibility as much, power as
Exactly.
it is, being given to you at that moment. So, I've been in some dicey situations before that have involved, leaks claims of firearm related, possession,
Hmm.
and just be very careful.
Hmm.
Just I just
Yeah,
to have be responsible is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, exactly. That's the number one key. If you're gonna have a gun, you have to understand the responsibility that comes along with owning it. If you fire a gun, you are responsible for wherever that bullet goes. So you just have to be deadly responsible with these things because it is a deadly weapon. So you know,
Yeah, be
with
wary of the legal ramifications, no matter the situation. Just
yep,
always be
yep,
vigilant.
exactly. But yeah, let's get into some freaking Supreme Court cases. The first big one was actually District of Columbia versus Heller, and this was back in 2005, I believe. No, it's 2008. So basically, this off-duty police officer, he was authorized to carry a handgun while on duty. He applied for a 1-year license for a handgun he wished to just keep at his home, and his application was denied. So basically, he sued the district court there. They just threw his court case away. It was then picked up by the Court of Appeals, and then finally it made its way up to the Supreme Court. And with a 5-4 decision, with Scalia giving um, the opinion for the majority opinion, he says the court upheld that the first clause of the Second Amendment that references a militia is a prefatory clause that does not limit the operative clause of the amendment, and that's completely true. Let's go back to this real quick and look at the wording. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what you need to look at. The militia part is a prefatory clause because this is written at the Revolutionary War. They wanted every able-bodied man to have a firearm because we were at war with a way bigger nation than us. So it was a lot more important back then to have guns. So they included that because they really wanted to drill into people that you needed to be able to defend yourself against this tyrannical government that was trying to not let people have their God-given freedoms, basically. So that's all prefatory clause. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And not just is that a prefatory clause, but compare this language to the language of the First Amendment. The First Amendment has the language Congress shall make no law. That is strong wording in its own, but shall not be infringed at all. No, there's no mention of Congress, no mention of courts, judges, any government. This is a right that goes all the way back to our being as organic life forms, as life forms that need to be able to defend ourselves against anything that'll threaten us or our property. So it's a very strong, and they did not mince their wording when they wrote this, basically. And they go on. Additionally, the term militia, like I was just saying this, should not be confined to those serving in the military because it was applied to all able-bodied men. To read the amendment as limiting the right to bear arms only to those in a governed military force would be to create exactly the type of state-sponsored force against which the amendment was meant to protect people. So if you said that only militias or the army could own guns, that is, like they said, and I fully agree with this, it's against the whole idea of the Second Amendment. If only the military can have guns, what's the point of the amendment? The right of the people. It doesn't say the right of the militia. It would have said that. They would have said that. They were very clear with their words. They would have said a well-regulated militia, the right of the militia. They didn't say that, though. They said the right of the people, everybody. So they were very clear when they wrote this, and it's scary that it was a 5-4 decision because, like, basically the dissenters say that the government has the power and should use the power to enforce arm legislation against citizens, which is it's just nutty because that was the point of the amendment, to give people the right to bear arms, anything that they needed to protect themselves, either against another person or another government. So that's what we're gonna start with. Is there anything you want to add on that, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's particularly frightening that that was decided. It's such a narrow margin of.
Yeah,
Could you imagine the latter alternative if it
I
had been,
I can't,
just
dude.
imagine that.
If they would have sided the other way, I would be breaking federal law right now with guns in my home, and every other firearm
Oh yeah,
owner would be breaking the law. That would have caused a fucking war right there. I don't know a single gun owner that wouldn't have fucking stood up for their right at that time. And if anything like this comes down the pipeline, you bet your ass I'm gonna fucking stand up for it because it's the most critical right, as it says in the title. So
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
so
It's mind-numbing to me that a single individual had the power to shift it over to an alternative reality where Heller versus DC um, is decided by the that's
it's,
right
it's crazy,
person.
dude. But at least there were people, good justices like Scalia and Thomas on there to actually word this in a good way and provide those majority votes. Because like you said, I couldn't imagine if it went the other way. We'd be living in a scary world now, and we were right on the fucking edge. I actually I mean, I knew it was a close decision before, but 5-4, man, that's rough. That is really rough. That just shows you like the state that our country and society are in, and that was back in 2008 too. So
What does a narrow margin like that indicate about the partisanship of the highest court in the land? If these landmark rulings are continuously decided by a single individual.
it's insane because the founders were so clear with their words, and these people who are not originalists, but what's the word the anti of originalists, saying that the Constitution is
Positive
a
rights.
yeah, they're saying that the Constitution is a living, breathing document, rather one that was meant. It meant what it meant at the time, and they want it to mean a certain thing because they knew what governments like these and people like tyrants like these, like Stevens, Souter, Ginsburg, would do with it. So they were very clear, and it's a good thing that they were very clear because if there was any kind of ambiguity in that law, it might have gone the other way. So
I would argue that it's less about the clarity of the actual written and the lack of originalists and constitutionalists
yeah.
that sit on the highest,
Mhm. Mhm.
direfully partisan.
Yep.
Um, and it frightens people like me and others in the libertarian community.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Um, but yeah, that was DC versus Heller. Would have been really bad if it went the other way. So here's the next one that basically shows you that you really need to take your life into your own hands. Nobody. So we'll get into this. So police have no duty to protect you. Federal court affirms yet again. So basically, a professor says neither the Constitution nor state law impose a general duty upon police officers or other governmental officials to protect you or protect individual persons from harm, even when they know harm will occur. Police can watch someone attack you, refuse to intervene, and not violate the Constitution. And I do agree with that somewhat because I don't think the Constitution obligates anybody to do anything, but at the same time, what does this mean? If it means that the police and other people aren't responsible for your life, then you are. You're the only person that's responsible for your life, and you need to take that so seriously because nobody else is going to be there to protect you when you need protection. And then he continues to say, courts have rejected the argument that students are in custody of school officials while they're on campus, basically saying that even students who are on campus, that police have no obligation to protect them. And they say that custody is narrowly confined to situations where a person loses his or her freedom to move freely and seek assistance on their own, such as prisons, jails, or mental institutions. And yeah, like I said, I'd agree with that, but at the same time, we can't. People that agree with this can't be getting rid of all of the other ways that you can protect yourself as an individual because at some point if these people, these gun grabbers, they get their way, you won't have a way to protect yourself, and just criminals and anybody that wants to harm you or your property will be able to, because you will have no way to defend yourself legally unless you want to become a criminal like them and break the law in order to protect yourself. which is, it's going to be the only option for a lot of people if laws come down the pipeline about stuff like this. So yeah, did you want to add anything on that, Chris?
Well, there's nothing that I would personally admit to,
Mm.
but I can tell you that a lot of people within the state of California are in a position where they have to violate some provision of the state law one way or another in order to be able to prevent themselves from being a sitting duck.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not a very kind world out there. There's a lot of evil people with malintent that walk around, and before the decision to pull the trigger has already been rendered, the mind has already been made up to commit that crime against another individual.
Yeah.
Their decision to kill, their decision to life, doesn't lie with the tool that they are using. It's the perpetrator behind the gun that has
Mm-hmm.
done that. You can either sit there and cower in a corner or run or whatever, but I much prefer to be the individual who, you know, takes an act of bravery in saving my fellow patrons.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever ramifications lie in the future,
Mm-hmm.
that's just how it goes. I'd much rather put my fate in the hands of 12 people than my dead carcass in the hands of 6 people.
Exactly.
Um, yeah,
And
I just would not. I think that I honestly believe that there's more risk sadly there's more risk in not violating the law than in abiding by the law. You know what I mean? Like
mm-hmm.
there's more risk in risking what, a misdemeanor for carrying a firearm without a concealed carry permit
Yeah.
than there is for not carrying a firearm and being a shitty situation like that where
Exactly.
evil strikes again.
Yeah, and then you're at the will of whoever wants to do harm to you, and I never want to be in that situation. I mean,
I don't believe any reasonable person would want to be subjugated to that, and not. I don't believe any reasonable gun enthusiast would even dream of being subjugated to that reality.
no, no, I wouldn't. But as you said, there's so many laws out there that are explicitly not allowing people to protect themselves. It's just sad, because
Oh yeah,
I think a lot more lives could be saved if people knew that they could defend themselves wherever and wherever they needed to, basically. Um, yeah. So again, police have no duty to protect you. The only person responsible for your own life is yourself. So if you want to
pretty
make
much.
sure you're safe, do everything in your power to make sure you're safe. And one of those things is owning and keeping a firearm for personal safety
Outside
defense
of
reasons.
politics, I just believe that.
Yeah. Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
That's no problem.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the next one here because I think we're yeah. Oh, and then we're gonna be getting into the upcoming Supreme Court case. Hopefully, the New York Times is chill with me right now. It wasn't letting me in earlier. So this is an article you sent me, Chris. So
Yes.
basically, the Supreme Court is to hear a case on carrying guns in public. The justices who have not issued a major Second Amendment ruling since 2010 will consider a challenge to a long-standing New York gun control law. So, in Washington, the Supreme Court said on Monday that it would review a long-standing New York law that imposes strict limits on carrying guns outside the home, setting the stage for its first major Second Amendment decision in more than a decade, and the first to be decided by the court's newly expanded conservative majority. And I mean, I won't call him that conservative. They only call him conservative because Trump appointed him. But I don't think Kavanaugh's very conservative. I don't even know if he'd vote with the court. At least with the court's
He's
conservative
far
justices
too
on these
precedented,
things.
man.
Exactly. And I think there was another thing I wanted to bring up in this. So basically, the new case is a challenge to a New York law, and this is where it comes out of, that requires people seeking a license to carry a gun outside of their homes to show a proper cause. There's no proper cause in the Constitution. It doesn't say that anywhere, basically. But 2 men denied licenses along with the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association sued, saying the state makes it virtually impossible for the ordinary law-abiding citizen to obtain a license. That's a concealed carry license. And I just wanted to show you guys a kind of, I think it's in this article, a kind of scary thing okay, this is the scary fucking thing that this judge says. So she says, our review of more than 700 years of English and American legal history reveals a strong theme. Government has the power to regulate arms in the public square. I want you guys to look at that language right there. Government She said government has the power. She didn't say government has the right, because they have no right. This is what these people are after. They're after the power to do stuff. These people are they're power hungry, and they don't want citizens having any power of their own, because they're narcissists, and they literally want, I don't know. I don't know what drives these people to control other people, but I just wanted to bring that up, and to that this judge is fucking cuckoo when she says this, has the power. That has no bearing on what is actually supposed to be decided by the U.S. Constitution. That was the idea before America. Yeah, of course governments had power, and they could do whatever they fucking wanted. They killed people, they enslaved people, they went to war with fucking whoever they wanted. Not America. Of course we have our problems, but it was about rights of the individual here. It wasn't about the power of the government, what the government could do or not. It was about what the government shouldn't do to fucking individuals. And they have no right to do anything with gun laws, in my opinion. I think the individual has the right to own basically any weapon, you know. I mean, I used to be a person that, you should even be able to use, personal little recreational nukes, but I don't know. That's a little too radical on my end. But basically, general arms, guns, cannons. I think even rocket launchers and grenades. I think you should be able to own them. That might be a little radical for two people, but at least firearms, I think everybody has the explicit right to own a firearm, because like we were talking about earlier, what are people going to do? Smaller people, women who can get attacked and assailed much easier than from a big man. Like it's an equalizer that we need, and if we don't have that equalizer there, the strongest will prevail, and we'll go back to the time of warlords and fucking people just controlling people based on how much power they had, rather than what rights the people have as individuals. So, yeah, is there anything you wanted to add in on that, Chris?
Hell yeah, man. I don't really believe that there's any that you said that I don't particularly disagree with. I honestly believe. Um, well, I mean, first and foremost, to go back to what you were saying originally, tyrant's gonna tyrant. Any authoritarians are just gonna
Yeah.
and I genuinely believe they do it for this voracious desire for more control over every facet of human
Mm-hmm.
life that can possibly get
Mm-hmm.
their tentacles. It's almost as if they get off on it,
Mm.
just doing that. Have to make that stand to be able to tell them that there's enough of us to tell them, to go fuck themselves. Essentially, we're just not going to allow it. We're just not going to, as they say, free men don't ask for permission.
That's goddamn right. Yeah, and on this world, all humans are created equal. That's what I believe, and you don't have any sort of power over anyone else. That you don't have a right to have any power over anyone else. We are all equals on this world, and we all come into it equal. We all fucking leave equal. So, and if
Yeah, one of the things that
go ahead. Sorry.
one of the things that I'm particularly optimistic about, a lot of people, Amy Barrett, I think in 2018, I wasn't too hot at the idea because it wasn't suggesting how she would what exactly her mental apparatus um, contained, like how she think or how she would decide. But she's put up particularly good pieces where she went as far as to advocating when she was a part of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals that even felons should own firearms. If they have not demonstrated explicit that has been deemed as a violent manner towards society, then there's nothing within a felony conviction, and there's nothing within the felony that coincides with the notion that they should be disarmed, and they should. There's no way they should have their Second Amendment right curtailed by any judge, municipality, or state or federal government.
Yeah.
So I'm particularly optimistic to see what she's going to say. At the upcoming Supreme Court cases.
Yeah.
Just what she's going to say. I've come to like her a lot in that regards.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I think felons, once you serve your time in prison or jail or wherever you're locked up at, I think that's time served. I don't think the government just gets to take away your rights, especially after, you're out of their domain. I don't think you lose your right to own a gun. I don't think you lose your right to vote after you become a felon. I think the justice system determines how much you need to be locked up, and there are crimes which really need people to be locked up and punished for.
Yeah,
And that those are the times where yeah you can't own a gun when you're being locked up as a felon. You know, there's just some people that you can't trust them with guns. Like, but that's I'm saying that in a facility. If you're outside of a facility, you've
yeah.
served your time. There's no reason for a government to restrict your rights. I think you've served your time, and I like. I don't think there should be any ramifications after that because it makes life so hard for these felons, when they get out of prison to actually have a normal life, to be able to vote, to be able to get a job, to be able to
Yep.
just do any of this. And it's just it's
Oh
wrong
yeah.
that people who've served their time for for something that they did, maybe a stupid action, and they get out of prison and they're just denied these rights that all citizens should have. So that's just a little
I guess
tangential
I
point.
guess arguably an exception is if a court system was able to adjudicate a certain individual to be incorrigible and repeatedly violent
Uh
in
huh.
society, then I would argue that maybe there's some legitimate interest in the eyes of
Mm-hmm.
the government to be able to do so. But you and I both know that's not what they give a shit about.
No.
They're not even taking. I don't think they're taking. It's simply a ploy for more and more control, and there's so much evidence suggesting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and yeah, I think we're done with this one. I think there might be one more Supreme Court case. Yeah, is there? Because I didn't have any more links, Chris. Is there? You said there's a Supreme Court case in Chicago that you wanted to talk about.
Yes, the famous ruling of
Yeah,
Chicago versus McDonald's.
let's
It
look
was
this
a
up.
2010 Supreme Court case, which basically states what we already. But the Second Amendment of the Constitution is not limited to that of the federal government. It is also applies
Mm-hmm.
to state and the local municipalities as well. So it's not simply a federal government thing that they need to adhere to what is written in the Bill of Rights. The states and municipalities must abide by that as well. That's essentially what it was. I think about 11 years ago when it was decided. It was very, very clear. I don't really know how you could, mental gymnastic your way out of that to
Mm-hmm.
try and say, oh well, there's a bit of leeway for some local gun control. No, they were very explicitly clear in that ruling.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, that's what the cases that are coming up are going to slap all these anti-gunners alongside the head 10 years later
Mm-hmm.
with NYSRPA versus Corlett.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially going to decide not only come out and say that what New York was doing is unconstitutional, but it's going to
Mm-hmm.
establish a landmark ruling that's going
Mm-hmm.
to drastically change
Yeah.
how the gun laws of a lot of anti-gun places are going to be. Like where we live, for example, the coastal part of California, very restrictive in the concealed carry issuing by the sheriffs. That's gonna that I'm drastically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This. I mean, I just looked it up right now. It's another 5-4 decision. What if it went the other way, saying what, and then your freaking your gun rights would only apply on federal property, and
Dude,
what
that's
that's
the
just
stuff of nightmares.
DC just yeah, exactly. It's just yeah, like I mean think about that would have applied heavily here in California. They would have just taken everything. It's a one party state. We would have just been fucking steamrolled over all of our rights. So
They already are.
yeah, yeah, it's true. But at least there's some semblance of some rights staying around. So it's good that there's some good decisions out there, but this isn't enough. We need more upholding of gun rights like this because I don't know. I understand gun violence is a problem, but human rights are such a bigger issue than I'm gonna say a few lives. Yeah, of course. I think human rights are paramount, and I don't think just because people die doesn't mean you get to ban human rights. I'm sorry, but that's not how rights work. You were born with rights. We were born equal, and it doesn't matter what happens to you. You have a right. In this case, you have a right to own a weapon, own a firearm. So, um, and then we'll just get into a few really just disturbing cases. Because this is what happens when the state has all the power and it's just really sad. So we'll go to this: the shooting of Philando Castile, and this happened back in 2016. So Castile, he's a 32-year-old African American man who was fatally shot during a traffic stop by police officer Geronimo Yanez of the St. Anthony's Police Department. So basically, he was driving with his girlfriend and a 4-year-old, and the kid was in the car, man. And so basically, so after being asked for his license and registration, Castile told Officer Yanez that he had a firearm. He was licensed to carry, to which Yanez replied, "Don't reach for it then." He was probably just going for his license like the fucker asked him to. And he said, I was reaching for, Yanez said, "Don't pull it out." He replied, "I'm not pulling it out." Reynolds says he's not, and then Yanez repeated, "Don't pull it out," and then Yanez fired 7 close-range shots at Castile, hitting him 5 times, and he died 37 minutes later, or about 20 minutes after being shot. It's sick. It's sick. He was probably just going for his license, and this fucking tyrant shot him just because he was scared. This is why I said earlier, I don't think cops have a right to use deadly force until it's so explicit that I don't think he should have been able to use deadly force until the gun was either pointing at him or it was fired. I'm sorry, but you take a responsibility as a police officer to put yourself in dangerous situations like this. And you don't have the right to kill someone just because they have a gun. And what made me so mad about this, so after 5 days of deliberation in the court case, because he was charged with manslaughter, he was acquitted, the officer, acquitted all charges in a jury trial. So he gets to kill someone and then just get away with it. So the state gets to kill someone and there's no ramifications other than it's so fucking stupid, because not only that, but the families got a settlement from the state, which is also paid by us, the people. So it's a lose-lose for fucking everybody involved. We got killed, and we also had to fucking pay for this bullshit. It's such fucking shit. This fucking officer should be having to fucking kiss the goddamn feet of these fucking family for the rest of his life. I don't care. He killed their goddamn son. And he killed a goddamn father in front of his child and his fucking wife. Like, it's so fucking just brutal and scary. Like, this is why we have a right to these things, man. Like, you don't have a right to just kill people, especially when they have an explicit right to do something. It's just, it's just so fucking stupid, man. And the even stupider thing about this whole thing is that BLM picked it up and tried to make it a whole, black thing. No, this happens to white people too, my dudes. Like, this happens to everybody all across the country. This isn't a black versus white thing. This is a fucking state versus the individual. And we have to stand up for every instance of this. Doesn't matter what their fucking color is. You don't get to do this if you're the state. You don't get to do it because we have rights as individuals. It's so sick what happened, man. But did you have anything to add to that, Chris? I think we might have lost Chris. Oh, you got muted. Okay. I think we might have lost Chris. Okay, so we're going to keep moving on here. If you come back, Chris, just let me know. So we're going to be getting into this next case here. This happened actually a couple weeks ago. So Chicago police say body cam footage shows less than a second passes from 13-year-old seen holding a handgun and shot by an officer. So basically, this officer had to make a split-second decision. It was the wrong decision. He shot this 13-year-old kid because he had a firearm. And so I don't want to read through the whole story, but basically what happened was this kid and this 21-year-old, they were running around the streets shooting up cars. Obviously, warrantable for, a little bit of force to be used to stop them. But what happened where the cops came in, and the cops started to chase this kid. They arrested the 21-year-old like on the spot, and they were chasing the kid. And basically, I don't want to show the video because it's a little too graphic. Kid turns around, he puts his hands up, and as he's putting his hands up, he's dropping the gun. But in those few seconds, the officer just fires at him and kills him. And I'm not giving any excuses for the two criminals that acted here, because they were doing some shady shit there, but I do not condone the actions of a police officer. Like I've been saying, I don't think a police officer has a right to shoot anybody until they know that there's an explicit use of threat threat of violence against them. So I don't think he should have been able to shoot until either the gun was pointed at him or shots were fired, because as I keep saying, you take on this responsibility as a cop. It's a dangerous job, and you don't just get to kill people because you feel threatened. No. You are now a ward of the state, or not a ward of the state, but you are a deputy of the state, and you have certain things to uphold. And when you take that oath to the Constitution, you have to uphold every fucking right and every goddamn word of that Constitution. And people that don't are unconstitutional oath breakers. So that's what we call them. That's what we call these cops that break their oaths. And this is a very kind of it is a choppy case just because of how little time there was. But basically, this kid was shot for having a gun on him, and I don't think that gives the right of the police officers to do anything of what they did, and it's just really sad that he had to be shot. And a lot of people got mad about this, obviously, because the kid's now dead. He was a 13-year-old kid who was just running down the street with a gun. I don't think just having a gun gives the police the right to basically kill an individual, kill a citizen. I think they have to wait until there's use of. They for sure know there's going to be a use of deadly force against them. Oh, but yeah, basically that wraps up the few little cases that I wanted to bring up. I really think that as an individual, you do have a right to own a gun, and just because you either own a gun or you're holding a gun, that does not give police officers or any other authority, for that matter, the right to kill you. So we'll get to the conclusion here. So basically, what's been happening as a direct result of all these laws, so more than a dozen states are trying to nullify federal gun control. So conservative state legislators are taking a page from the playbook of pro-immigration activists and the marijuana legalization movement, which is, it's kind of crazy that the Second Amendment advocates have to do this, because it's explicitly mentioned in the Constitution that we have a right to keep and bear firearms. I understand, pro-immigration thing and marijuana thing. That's a 10th Amendment subject, because, the Constitution doesn't explicitly say anything about marijuana, but it doesn't say they have any right to have jurisdiction over it either. So per the 10th Amendment, they have no right to make legislation over marijuana. Immigration, I think, is a little bit more dicey. I think immigration, there are a lot of things that talk about immigration, crossing of state lines, but for this, I think states are in their full jurisdiction to be able to do something like this. So, if they have to pass these laws in their states to nullify federal gun control, I'm all for it. And we'll read what a lawmaker said about it. So nullifying unconstitutional federal laws is both legal and it's also the right thing to do. It is silly to sit around and wait for something is unconstitutional. It's time to stand up and fight back. And the methods that we need to use are the ones that are already being used by the left. And this is a Republican, obviously. Not all Republicans are the same on gun control. Trump wasn't the best on gun control. He banned bump stocks, and now that same thing, we'll get into this on the next one, is being used now by the Biden administration to ban pistol braces. They make the excuse that they're turning them into rifles, which is just complete horseshit. If you know anything about guns, it doesn't change it into a rifle just because it's a longer barrel. But anyways, I really agree with states doing this. States like Arizona, I know New Hampshire has it. Let's see where else. They don't have a map, unfortunately. But I know Arizona has a law like this. New Hampshire does. Florida does now, I think. Basically, constitutional carry. You have no obligation to go get a concealed carry license because it's in the Constitution. You have an explicit right to keep and bear arms outside of the home, in my opinion. Outside and in the home. It doesn't matter where you are in this country. You have the explicit right to own a firearm. I would go outside of that, not just the country. I say if you're a human, you have a right to own a firearm. It's sad in other nations where they have no right to stand up for themselves and protect themselves with by any means necessary, because a lot of people get killed because they can't defend themselves, or either the criminals are the only ones to get the weapons, and other people are just left helpless, and it's really sad. And it's good that a few states are actually backing the Constitution, what it actually says, and doing something about it. So I'm all for this. I think every state should be a constitutional carry state because it's in the goddamn Constitution for the fucking 100th time. It's explicit. We've been through this. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not. They were so clear on that. And for them to disagree with that and try to make laws that that ban some of these either bump stocks or modifications or even certain type of weapons, I think it's all unconstitutional, and it's all crap. It's all crap, in my opinion. And last little thing I wanted to get to, just to wrap this up, we are going to look at what's going to happen with the Biden administration, and this is a little bit tangential too, but you guys see how it says Biden-Harris administration? They didn't used to do that with any other administration. They didn't say the Trump-Pence administration. They didn't say the Bush, I'm forgetting his name. Oh no. I forgot the vice president. Cheney. They didn't say the Bush-Cheney administration. No, they would just say Bush administration. So it just shows you a little bit of what the White House thinks about its president and co-president, as Ben Shapiro always likes to say. That always makes me laugh. But that's just a little aside here. Basically, the Biden administration, they want to put a lot of things down through the pipeline about gun control. And we can just go through a couple of these things. So the Justice Department, within 30 days, will issue a proposed rule to help stop the proliferation of ghost guns. And ghost guns is just a scary term for any gun that doesn't have a serial number. I actually know a lot of people, not personally, but I know a lot of people that, they build their own guns, and they, especially with 3D printing now, you can print a lower receiver for a AR-15, and it's not going to have a serial number on it. You can build it yourself, put it all together, and bam, you got a gun. And that's what they call a ghost gun. It's just any gun that doesn't have a serial number on it that they can't track. So the whole goal with that is to make sure, I think the Biden administration and the government, they just want to know everybody that has guns, and they have no right to know that, in my opinion. They really have no right. We already have a right to keep and bear arms. I don't think they have a right to know who has those arms, because if anything bad ever happens with laws, let's say one of those court cases gets overturned and the government says you don't have a right to keep and bear arms, in one of those cases, they will have on record everybody that has a firearm. They can go directly to their houses and just, confiscate their arms basically by force. This is another thing I wanted to bring up as a libertarian. If you make a law about anything, you have to be dead sure that law is something that you want enforced. Because any law, it doesn't matter how small it is, any law, if somebody breaks that law, the end of that line could be death. There are a lot of cases where basically a person's light is just out on their car, and at the end of an altercation, they die for it. So you better be damn sure if you're making a law, it better be fucking just. Because if you make that law, if you ban something, you're implicitly saying that you support people dying for breaking that law. So just be damn sure you're going to be you are just with lawmaking, because any law can result in somebody dying, because the state has a monopoly on force. None of the rest of us have any right to use force on anybody else. It's only the state. So that's just a little aside, though. Just my philosophy is, don't try to ban things, don't try to make laws about things, because it could result in the deaths of people, and that's obviously not a good thing. But that's just a little bit of my libertarian coming out. The second thing that the Biden administration wants to do, so Justice Department, within 60 days, and I was talking about this earlier, will issue a proposed rule to make clear when a device marketed as a stabilizing brace effectively turns a pistol into a short-barreled rifle subject to the requirements of the National Firearms Act. And they make the argument that it turns it into a rifle and it makes it more deadly. No, that's completely wrong. It's just people that say stuff like this obviously don't know anything about firearms or weapons, because these are just modifications that us gun owners use to make shooting a little bit more comfortable, and I don't think the government has any right to regulate stuff like that. If I want a stock on my gun or anything else like that, I should have the right to put it on there. Like, they don't have a right to regulate that kind of stuff. In my opinion, anyways. But that's just like the bump stop thing that Trump did, which was really sad. I was hoping Trump would do more stuff to protect the Second Amendment, but he really didn't. He was really a moderate president in terms of conservative liberal policy. He's really half and half on my end. A lot of people say he's this radical. No, there was a lot of liberal leftist policy that he pushed through, and I don't know. It's just sad that people can't see Trump for what he really was, which is a moderate with a very big potty mouth, basically. His rhetoric was the bad thing about Trump. Policy-wise, yeah, he did some bad stuff, but he also did a lot of good stuff. So, I don't know. If you don't like Trump, go actually look up his policy. I'm sure there's something you agree with him on. Everybody just got whipped up into a frenzy from the media from all this. But anyways, that's besides the point to all this. So it says here, the Justice Department within 60 days will publish a model red flag legislation for states. And this is the scary one because a red flag law basically states that, if you have a family member you're worried about that's a gun owner, you can tell your local sheriff's department you're worried about them and they can just go take their guns. There's no warrant. There's no warrant for an arrestable offense. It's just if somebody's worried about you. And that's completely scary because this has happened to dozens of people across, not just dozens. I think it's definitely more than that. But basically, a red flag law is used to go confiscate law-abiding citizens' weapons, and basically take their rights away. And that's so fucking wrong, dude. Like just imagine any one of your imagine a crazy family member of yours. You're a gun owner, and they say crazy whack at shit to a sheriff's department, they can just come and take your guns away. And I know for me, if anybody shows up to my door, government or not, wants to take my guns, they ain't taking them. I'm sorry, but it's not happening. It's easy as that. And that's how a lot of other gun owners feel. And I think that's pretty much the end of it, end of the things that I wanted to bring up. But yeah, that's I think that's what I want to end on. If anybody ever tries to take my guns, government or not, they're not getting them, and at least while I'm alive. So it's not going to happen. That's the majority opinion of most gun owners. And if legislation passes that makes us criminals, so be it. I have to be able to defend myself, and other people have to be able to defend themselves. I don't care what laws are out there. I'm going to defend myself and my family and my property. And I think a lot of people would agree with me. So hopefully the legislature and the government can follow. Hopefully they'll just leave us alone, because a firearm has saved my life before. Either that saved my life and my property. And I'm never going to give that right up. Ever, 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 under any circumstance. So hopefully these politicians can get through their thick fucking skulls that we're not going to give up our rights just because they tell us to. It's not going to happen. So I think I was going to end off with that. I think Chris dipped out. There's probably something happened with... or are you there, Chris? Okay, he's probably still out. But yeah, we had a great show today. I hope you guys learned some stuff on firearms, just a little bit of what they are, how they work, what laws are around them, and why it's so important and critical that we keep and we fulfill this right of ours to keep and bear arms, because it's so critical. It's so important. And anyways, I'll leave it off there. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I hope you guys enjoy the show, and we'll see you next time. Peace out and stay spicy.